next speaker is a gentleman that I'm looking forward to listening to because I used to be in his profession. He's a venture capitalist. I used to do that, and now I'm a dating coach and confidence coach, which my mom isn't a humongous fan of, as you can imagine. She used to be able to say, "Oh yeah, my son's a venture capitalist. What does he do now? He's a dating coach." But hey, you can't do what mom wants you to do. You gotta follow your passion. So we've got Benson coming on, and as I said, he's a VC and a serial entrepreneur. He has written 9 books, all on business. He's interviewed over 200 people, including the Oracle of Omaha. Anyone know who that is? Warren Buffett. Guy has a couple bucks. And he's got 20 years of experience in the finance VC world. So help me welcome Ben.
Thanks. A West Texas rancher, this is one of those real rich Texans, tens of thousands of acres of land, dozens of producing oil wells. He's got an Olympic-sized swimming pool and a mansion of a house. And what he wanted to do was hold a party for his daughter, his youngest daughter, who he wanted to marry off as quickly as he could. So he invited all the best-looking single salesmen from all over West Texas to come to this party. Now, this is one of those real rich Texans, tens of thousands of acres of land, dozens of producing oil wells. He's got an Olympic-sized swimming pool and a mansion of a house, tens of thousands of head of cattle. And the party goes really well, and at about midnight, he invites everyone out to his Olympic-sized swimming pool that he has the foresight to stock with alligators and crocodiles. And he says, the first man that will jump in this pool and swim the length of it and get out the other side alive and in one piece, I'll give 10,000 acres of my best land to. And if he doesn't want the land, I'll give him $1 million in cash. And if he doesn't want the cash, I'll give him the hand of my beautiful daughter in marriage. And she was a good-looking girl. Now, no sooner as he said that, there was a loud splash by an almost immediate emergence of a guy getting out the other end of the pool alive and in one piece. Now, the host is stunned. So he runs down to the other end of the pool, and he says, "That's amazing. You must have just set a world record that will never be broken." He says, "What do you want? 10,000 acres of my best land?" "No, sir." $1 million in cash? "No, sir." And then he says, and puts his arm around him, he says, "Well, son, I have to assume you want to take the hand of my beautiful daughter in marriage. And I don't need to tell you this, but everyone knows, whoever gets the hand of my beautiful daughter in marriage will eventually get everything I own. Is that what you want?" And the response is again, "No, sir." So the host says, "For crying out loud, what do you want?" He says, "I want to know the name of the guy that just pushed me in the swimming pool." Now here's the question. How many of you, by show of hands, would agree that that guy was motivated? Show of hands. All right, everyone in the room. So if you consider this, we do a lot of presentations for a lot of different types of groups. And quite often we'll have a situation where people will call me in to do a presentation and say, "We've just brought Ben in today, and for the next 25 minutes, he's going to motivate you." And everyone kind of folds their arms and sits back in the seat, and you can see it written on their faces. They're thinking to themselves, "Oh yeah, let's see how he does." 25 minutes later, you drag yourself out of the room, and everyone thinks to themselves, "Yes, I'm still demotivated." Well, I'm really excited to be here today, and I want to share with you some things that I think can make a difference. My name's Benson, and I want to share with you a couple of principles, a few principles that I think if you apply and experiment with will bring an understanding and an increase in productivity, particularly in the business world. How many of you, by show of hands, are currently working for yourself, or perhaps you'd like to work for yourself sometime in the future? About everyone in the room, okay? So would it be fair in saying that we're all entrepreneurs here. We all want to do something different, perhaps make our mark in the world. Okay. So what we're going to do is look at a couple of principles and kind of give you a little bit about background of what I've done, how I got in this position, so that perhaps you can relate to what's necessary and really take your situation to the next level. About 10 years ago, I was in a situation where I thought, how am I going to really take what I feel in my head, what I can see in my mind, and make it real in my world? And what I'm about to share with you are some of the principles that help me do that. Perhaps the best place to start is at the beginning. When I was 5 years old, my mother asked me a question that to this day, until my dying day, I'll never forget. She said, "Son, I'm leaving the home. Who do you want to live with? Me or your dad?" 5 years old. I ran out of the house, ran down the street, and never saw my mum again. A few hours later, my dad came and found me, and my dad brought me up until I was about 24 years old. Well, I knew my dad until about 24 years old, and then for one thing or another, he left the family. But the reason I share that with you is this. The reason why my parents split up and the reason why we always had problems in our home was because of money, or the lack of money. Everything was related to this problem of not being able to manage financially. Now, some of you may be able to resonate with that. Some of you may know people that perhaps have been in that situation. Some of you might be going through some major challenges right now. But what I want to share with you is a series of ideas and principles that I think if you understand on a macro level and then down to specifically what you're doing on a daily basis, you can make a difference for you and those people around you. Pretty bold claim to make, I know, but I'm confident, satisfied. We've shared this with lots and lots of different types of people, and the feedback that we've had has been significant. So with that, let's just have a look at the current situation kind of globally. Let's understand what's happening on a global level, and then I'm going to bring it right down to you as an individual as to what is currently happening and what's going on in your own mind and some of the things that you can do to make things happen. First of all, in the new economy, only 3 employees will be required for a new company, for a large company, or any company. A man, a dog, and a computer. The man will be there to feed the dog, and the dog will be there to stop the man from touching the computer. See, just last week, I went into my local bank to pay some money into my account. Only 18 months ago, I could go into my local branch and there would be 8 to 10 people sitting behind glass sections ready to serve. Today, there's one person sitting behind a glass section and one person managing 9 paying-in machines. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Look down the checkout aisle of any supermarket and you will notice that slowly but surely, conveyor belt tellers are being replaced by self-service machines, right? Filling stations, slowly becoming fully automated. 24 hours they're open now, not because they have more staff, but because they have more unmanned computers. See, new technology has been dissolving large corporations for some time. And the hard facts remain. If you're an employee, if you work for a large organization, then in the next few years, 2 to 3 years, you will be in a minority. So why am I sharing that with you? Because you and me, if we want to get ahead, we're going to have to become more resourceful. We're going to have to do things differently. The landscape is changing. Change is happening at a rapid pace. Even the rate of change has changed. So how do we make that happen for ourselves? What are some of the things that we can do to make that happen? Well, I wrote a book. I finished a book about 6 months ago called The 7 Laws. It's been pretty successful up till now. We've shared it with a lot of different groups, and there was a few distinctions of wealth perhaps as we go forward that I want to share with you. And as I share this stuff with you, I'd like you to ask yourself a couple of significant questions. The first question is this: is this true? Is the material I'm hearing today, is it true? Is it accurate? Does it sound correct? And if it is true, here's the second question, builds on the first. If it is true, what am I willing to do about it? Because we know, we come to these events and these kinds of conventions and we learn some really neat things. And then when we get back home, nothing's changed at home. And so it's incumbent upon us to take the stuff that we've learned and really do something with it. So that's kind of my impassioned plea to you today. If there are things of value, make sure you write them down and then do something with them. That will certainly help you as you go forward. A couple of principles to have a look at. I call these distinctions of wealth, and we'll just cover a few of them and then we'll get into some of the real material that I want to share with you. A couple of distinctions. Distinction number one, first thing is this: income will not make you wealthy. Income will not make you wealthy. Getting a well-paid job is not going to create the kind of life that you really want, the kind of life that you see in your head that you're trying to make real in your world. Income might provide nicely for retirement, but if you want to create wealth, you're going to have to do something different. And that something different is this: you need to own equity in a series of transactions. Does that make sense? Equity in a series of transactions. Owning equity. So a simple example of that is you buy a house, right? And you own equity in that and it goes up in value and you sell it. Well, that's kind of the example that you hear time and time again, but there are tons and tons and tons of ways that you can own equity in things where you don't have to put money in to start it off, okay? Equity is the way you become wealthy, not income. Are you with me? The second distinction of wealth is this: saving money will not make you wealthy. Saving money, putting £200 or $200 away every single month is not going to make you wealthy. Again, it might provide for a nice retirement. But if you go and speak to the top 100 people on the Forbes 400 or the Sunday Times Rich List, they didn't save their way to wealth. They did something else. Another distinction of wealth is this: you will not do it on your own. You agree with me? If any of you think I'm the guy who's going to go out and change the world and I'm the guy who's going to make things happen, you won't do it on your own. Everyone that you see that appears to be the front man has got a team of people behind them, usually doing things better than they could. You know, when I got into business for the first time, it took me years to learn that, and it's obvious. It is such an obvious distinction, but I tried to do everything myself. So I wanted to learn coding, and I wanted to learn, email marketing, and I wanted to kind of understand how to find the right people, and I couldn't do all those things. I was crap at half of those things. But what I learned very quickly is start to hire people better than you. And here's a really important distinction. There will come a time in your business, if you're starting a business, where you're going to start paying someone or some people more than you pay yourself. When you do that, believe me, it's a tough pill to swallow, but when you start doing that, you know you're making progress. Another distinction of wealth. You're not going to make it and create significant wealth in your life unless you understand debt. Another way of saying that is leverage. Again, if you look at the most successful people on the planet, they didn't just kind of evolve. Most companies today, in fact, 99% of companies out there today, concentrate and spend all of their time and efforts on what we would call internal growth. Internal growth is the most common way of growing a company, but it is also the slowest and usually the most expensive. That's internal marketing. Well, we're going to go out and we're going to try and increase our market share. How are we going to do that? We're going to do it through email. We're going to do it through having salespeople on the road. We're going to do it through a whole host of different ways. But in reality, it is the slowest way to grow a business. So what is the fastest way? And what is the way that the most successful people on the planet build their businesses? Through acquisition. You know, what do you think is better? Starting your own business or buying one that is already a going concern? You tell me. Now, how long might it take you to build that business to the stage where you're ready to buy a business? It might take you 5 years. By that time, the way change is happening, man, you're obsolete. But if you can get involved in a business that's perhaps already moving, that's already created, that's already got customers, that's already got the people in place doing the job that you would have to go and find, well, you're now in the top 10% of the most successful people in terms of building a business because the model's already in place. Don't worry about business plans either. Business plans, and people come to me and say, I've got a business plan. I'm not interested in a business plan. The most important thing you need to understand in setting up a business and making a business viable is the business model. How do we create money? Where does the cash flow? With cash flow, you're an entrepreneur. Without cash flow, you're not. Simply stated. So how does the cash flow into the business? And that's something you can write on a napkin. You can work that out on a napkin. What is the business model and how are we going to make money flow into the business and then out of the business? And if you can make that work, that's usually something that you can explain in under 2 minutes. I've never written a business plan. So let's have a look at perhaps some of the specific laws and how they apply to us. I spent 2 years interviewing, like I said, a number of pretty significant people. I'd been fairly successful in business myself. I started a business at 17 years old. I sold it when I was 24. And then I went and took all the money. I had enough money to retire, which is a pretty nice place to be. And then 18 months later, all the money's gone. All of it. Why? I'll tell you why, because I thought I was the absolute ultimate. I thought I was a little bit special. And so now, because I've made this money, I can invest in everyone and I know exactly how to make their businesses work. And I fell flat on my face and lost everything and had to start again. And that was the worst decision for me financially and the best decision for me in terms of building character. Because now I knew what it really takes to make it in the business world. And I want to share with you some of those things right now. As we were going around and interviewing people on the rich list, and we went to see significant people that had really made a difference in their lives. Perhaps another distinction that I failed to tell you a few minutes ago was this. Overnight successes, most of them are probably somewhere in the region of about 20 years in the making. Don't misunderstand that. Mark Zuckerberg is an exception. An exceptional exception. But for most of us, it's going to take the best part of our natural lives to build something that we're proud of. So let's look at some of the laws. The 7 laws of wealth is a methodology, if you will, of distinctions and ideas that I have seen that have worked for me and I have seen really successful people utilize in their businesses. And the first law is this. Gain control. Promote self-leadership and initiative. Gain control, promote self-leadership and initiative. Reputation, distinction, and power will always result. Now, what do I mean by that? This isn't leadership power over people. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about self-leadership. My ability to get myself to do what needs to be done. And in reality, most people are just simply too lazy to do that. Kind of, they know what they should do, and even if they don't know, they're not really willing to do what it takes. And for me, when I was 24 years old, I was sulking about the situation that I'd created for myself, and it took me about 6 months to realize the only person that's going to change this situation, Ben, is you. After complaining and blaming everyone else, it was me. And in that moment, I had a really important thought. And it was this: Ben, if I want things to change, I'm going to have to change. If I want things to be different, I'm going to have to do things different. And if I really want to step up, I'm going to have to step up. And so you need to ask yourself that question: am I really willing to do what it takes? Being able to step up is to understand some key principles of what we can control versus what we can't control. And I'm going to get some participation, hopefully, from you guys. What I'm going to do is suggest for a moment that this room is what we would call our control model. In fact, in your notes, on the right-hand side, if you kind of draw a line across, let me do it for you so you can see it. If you draw a line across the page, this side write no control. This side write total control. Now, we're not talking about controlling other people, we're talking about controlling you, about the kinds of things that you're doing on a daily basis to build a business that you can be proud of. So this side of the room, let's suggest for a moment that this side of the room represents stuff, events, things over which you have absolutely no control on a daily basis. Give me some examples of stuff over which you have no control. Do we need a mic? Do we need a mic for this, or can you shout it? Shout it, okay. Give me some examples of stuff over which you have absolutely no control. Over here.
Currency fluctuations.
Currency fluctuations, not a lot of control, very relevant for these times. Good, what else? Natural disasters, not a lot of control there. Good. Any others? Politics. I'm not going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole, but he's right, isn't he? Politics. We have no control over what the government chooses to do individually. What else? Other people. There's a good one. Other people. I remember asking this question, and a guy said, my wife. And he's not far wrong, is he? It's other people. Can we control other people? No. Great short-term strategy. Can we impact people? Yeah. Can we influence? Yeah. But that's not total control. Okay? So give me some other words, some from perhaps this side. Give me some other words to describe things over which you have no control. Give me some more. The weather. All right, there's another one. In England, we spend a lot of time talking about that one, don't we? We have no control over what the weather decides to do or not do. What else? Again? Illness. Okay, there's another one. Maybe if it's hereditary, perhaps. Not a lot of control over that. Certain health things, perhaps, that we can do in terms of maintenance. But generally speaking, not a lot of control there. Give me some words to describe how you feel inside when you're up against this side of the room. You're out of control. How do you feel?
Nervous.
Nervous. Thank you. What else? Anxious. Any other words? Scared. Apprehensive, uncomfortable. Are we describing good feelings on this side of the room? No. What's the self-esteem factor over here? Generally speaking, it's pretty low, right? But is there much sense in getting upset over an event that I have no control? No. But do we? Yes. We spend a fair amount of time worrying about stuff over which we have no control. Don't we? I grew up in Texas for a few years, and I used to go down to a little place called Galveston Bay, and I had a few friends, and they would dare me to jump in and swim the width of this little area. It was probably about half a mile across, and I never swam properly. I'd kind of passed my 10 meter certificate, and that was it. But because they were my friends, and the peer pressure was so strong, they said jump in and swim the width of it. So I did one day. Because if I got to the other end, it meant that I would be in their gang. So I jumped in and started to swim across. Halfway across, I thought I was going to drown. How many of you have ever been in that situation where you think you're going to drown? A few people in the room, I can see the hands. Not a nice place to be. Out of control, right? Completely out of control experience. About 150 meters away from me, I saw a fin gliding through the water. It was not coming towards me, but I saw a fin gliding through the water. The need to get to the other side went absolutely crazy. And funnily enough, I got to the other side. Why? Well, I learned an interesting lesson that day. It's okay to drown. It is not okay to get eaten. Is it? And I made it to the other side. Why? Because of this principle, and write this down. When the need is big enough, you learn to control all kinds of stuff that you hook yourself into believing you can't control. Let me say that again. When the need is big enough, you'll learn to control all kinds of stuff or events that you believe you can't control. Next time you go to the circus, go outside and have a look at where the fully grown elephants are kept. You'll notice an interesting lesson. Those fully grown elephants are tied with a piece of rope around one of their back legs. That rope is attached to a stake, 3 or 4 foot driven in the ground. You look at that elephant and you look at the stake and say, you know, if that thing wanted to kick it and go home, it could, but it doesn't. Why? It doesn't think it can. And the reason it doesn't think it can is that when it was a baby, they put a steel clamp around that back leg, which was attached to a chain. For 3 weeks, never more than 4 weeks, the elephant fights that thing in a frenzy trying to get away. And then after 3 weeks, it stops trying, right? Well, whenever I'm hooked up, I can't get away. So literally now I can put a wet noodle around that elephant. It's not going to try and get away. Why? It doesn't think it can. And we're kind of the same way. So recognize, number one, there are a number of things over which we have absolutely no control. Let's not spend any time really worrying about those things. Let's go to this side of the room and give me some examples of things over which you have absolute, total, complete control. Let me say it again. Absolute, total, complete control. I wish you could see your faces. It's like, Ben, I don't think I can control anything. Give me some examples. What do you have control over? All right? Yourself. And that's the whole reason why you come to events like this, right? To understand how I can get control of me. Good response. Give me another one. Your time. How I choose to use my time. How I choose to do the things that I'm supposed to do or that I want to do. What else? Your reactions. Good. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good one, isn't it? It's our reactions to certain situations. And here's an interesting question. Do you react or do you respond? See, reaction is something that you do because someone else has acted. Responding is more proactive, right? If you respond to a situation, you're more determinative. In fact, if you go to the doctor and say, Doc, I've got this rash on my arm, can you suggest something for it? And he says, try this solution, come back in 2 weeks and tell me how you're doing. You go back after 2 weeks and the doc says, well, it looks like the treatment is reacting to your skin. Is that good or bad? That's bad, right? But what if the doc says it looks like the treatment is responding to your skin? Is that good or bad? Now, so you might think it's semantics, but it's really not. It has a much more powerful meaning when we understand responding as opposed to reacting to certain situations. On this side of the room, give me some other examples of things over which you have total control. A couple of others. Decisions, all right? The decisions that we choose to make. Any others? Okay, the way you think, your thoughts. What's the self-esteem factor over here, high or low? It's nice to be in control, isn't it? To be in control of your life to the point where the things that you're doing are yielding the results that you want in the first place. But it takes a certain type of individual to make that happen. And this person is the kind of person that really understands law one, the ability to gain control of themselves. To be able to step up, to be able to do everything that they're supposed to do and they want to do to create the kind of results that they want to create in their lives. And so notice also that everything that you have in your life in terms of results, whether it's personal, professional, financial, whatever it might be, you have all those things based on the decisions that you've made up to this point. So if you want different, you're going to have to do different. Or you're going to have to do more of what you've already done. And, so there's no high fives and group hugs here today. It's very much about this is what it takes, this is what we've seen works, and this is what we're going to have to do. Need a volunteer. Someone that's willing to gain or possibly earn 400 grand today. Show of hands. Oh, it's interesting, isn't it? When the need is big enough. All right, this gentleman here in the blue, what's your name?
Lloyd.
Lloyd. Stand up, Lloyd. Where are you from?
Sorry.
Surrey, okay. That's all right. We like Surrey. Lloyd, if I said to you, do you know the M1?
Yeah.
If I said to you, Lloyd, if you'll be at Newport Pagnell Services on the northbound side reception desk at 8 o'clock tonight, 8 p.m., there'll be a check waiting there for you for £400,000, right? All you've got to do, Lloyd, is be there on time. Would you be there on time?
I'll make sure I'll be on.
Yeah, look at his face. Yeah, I'd make sure I'd be there on time, right? Okay, Lloyd, what time would you leave?
Now.
Right now, baby. Don't need to think about that one. I'm going, right, making time to go out straight away, right? Let's say Lloyd, he's accosted someone in London, he's stolen their car, and he's making steady progress up the M1. He gets within 3 miles of welcome break services, okay, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, traffic thickens up and he comes to a standstill. Cars on both sides, right, Lloyd? Are you with me? Okay, so at this point, he's looking around, he's thinking to himself, it's 7:15, cars on both sides. You turn on the radio and it tells you that a truck's tipped over, spilt 2x4s of wood all over the place. It's going to take 3 hours to clear it up. Are you going to be there on time, yes or no?
Yeah.
How?
Go out, run.
Ha! A man after my own heart. He's going to get out and run. He's going to walk, he's going to run, he's going to crawl. He's going to leap tall buildings with a single bound if that's what it takes. See, when the need is big enough, we learn to control all kinds of stuff that we believe we can't control. And the issue is the need to do it. Thanks, Lloyd. So understanding the need to gain control is the foundational law in building any wealth. And you'll notice that this law really has very little to do with money and a whole lot to do with leadership, a whole lot to do with self-leadership and your ability to move when it's required. Law 2. Embrace the future. What does that mean? Well, more than just being some kind of phrase, embrace the future really means understanding, number one, what your skills are. What are your skill sets? Because each of you here today have certain things that you may or may not know would yield the kind of results that you want. Some of you have tapped them, and some of you are still looking for what they are. But each of you, in your own way, have got unique skills and abilities that can be commercialized. And your job is to find out what those things are. Whenever people come up to me and say to me, how am I going to create value? How am I going to be able to make it as an entrepreneur? 3 things to consider. What do you do well? That's the first one. Ask yourself that question. What do I do well? The second thing is, what do I do better than most? There's got to be some sort of differentiation between you and the masses. What do I do well, and what do I do better than other people? And then the last one is, and how can I create value for people doing these things? How can I create value for people doing these things? The name Howard Hill. How many of you have heard of Howard Hill? Show of hands. Howard Hill? No? Looks like I got to you just in time then, right? Howard Hill was an archer. True story. Some say he was the greatest of all time. As a youngster, I remember used to watch Record Breakers, and probably some of you might know that show. But Record Breakers, Roy Castle used to host that show, and on one occasion he had Howard Hill with his bow and arrow. He was an archer. How many of you have ever shot the bow and arrow? Show of hands. Any good, any of you? Any good? Well, I know I could take any one of you and make you a great archer, provided we did a couple of things. Howard Hill went into 287 tournaments and placed first 287 times. He was able to take his bow and arrow and kill a white shark under 15 feet of water. He was able to bring down a Bengal tiger, they said the fastest and hardest of game animals to stop, with a bow and arrow. He was able to fire at someone's head with an apple on it and split it in two. And in fact, he was the guy in the film Robin Hood with Errol Flynn. See, that wasn't camera work, that was a real guy, and his name was Howard Hill. Now, I've never shot the bow and arrow professionally, but I know I could take any one of you here today and providing your eyesight was good and your health was normal, have you shooting more consistently than that of Howard Hill, the best day of his life. Provided, of course, we first blindfolded Howard Hill and turn him around a couple of times so he didn't know what direction he was facing. You might say, well, Ben, that's stupid. That's juvenile, isn't it? How can a person hit a target they can't see? That's a good question. Well, how are you going to fulfill an outcome that you don't have? So the key with embracing the future is to understand that things out front won't occur until we start making the steps, the necessary steps, right now to ensure those things happen. If we had more time, we'd go into more detail on that one. Let's look at the third one. Owner strategy is so important. You know, we hear about these people that talk about these conferences, and you go into them and there's no real strategy in terms of, well, what am I going to do from day one? Let me tell you a couple of things that you must do in creating a strategy. Part of that strategy, and by the way, a strategy generally speaking is very simple. It's a simple thing, steps that I have to do to ensure that I create this outcome. The first thing you need to do in whatever business it is you're trying to create, go and find someone that's significantly more successful than you in that area or a related area. Find someone who is, see, if you want to make 100 grand a year as an example, go and find someone who's already making 300,000 or 400,000 a year, right? Don't think that my uncle is really successful in business and he's making about 50 grand and he's going to teach me how to make 100 grand. We love your uncle, but he's not the guy on this occasion, right? If you're serious about you and you're serious about creating results, get around people who are significantly more successful than you are. And I'll tell you, it will rub off. Now, that's a principle not just for making money, it's a principle for life, folks. You know, if I want to be good in a certain area, let me get around people that have already done it and have been successful doing it, because that will rub off. That is the fastest track to becoming successful. When I sold my first business, I thought to myself, okay, I've had a certain level of success. Now what I want to do is find out how the big people really do it. And so I went and found them, and I knocked on their door, and do you think they said, yeah, come on in the first time? Who the heck are you? Why should I give you the time? But I was committed, and I wanted to do it, and I did. Again and again and again. Did I get turned down again and again and again? Yes, absolutely. But I kept on trying and asking and trying and asking, and in the end, people said, yeah, come on. All right. If this is what it takes to get you off my back, let's do it. Strategy. There's a whole load of principles around strategy again. The next one, the next point, the next law, if you will, is always execute. And this, for me, is the pinnacle that everything else rests upon. If you can find a way to execute, or in other words, do what you say you're going to do, you know, really make that happen. King Philip of Macedon was known in the father of Alexander the Great. He was known to be the king who wanted to invade all of Greece and own the entire land. And he was doing okay until he realized there was one small area in Greece that needed to be captured: Sparta. He sent a letter to the Spartans and said, we want you to surrender. If you do not surrender, we will come down and we will kill your children. We will rape your wives and we will raze the city. We invite you to surrender forthwith. They sent a letter back to Alexander. One word on a piece of paper. If. If. That was the word. Do you think he went? Do you think he invaded Sparta? It was the one place that he didn't go to. Why? didn't execute. Now, we don't know the reasons why he chose not to, but he didn't. And that is the biggest reason in life why people don't get what they want, because they fail to execute. They fail to follow through. They fail to do what needs to be done. That is the foundational key for all success. You know, and anyone comes to me and says, well, I want you to help me with this business, or I want you to do this or do that, I'll set them a task. Say, if you do this, do it. And you know about 90% don't, and that's just the reality of it. Always execute. Understand that boldness and audacity yields results. Boldness and audacity yields results. If you really want to be successful in business and in life, get out there and do things that people aren't doing and be bold about it. Okay? Let people know that this train is leaving no matter what. I'm going to make this thing happen. Law 5. Very quickly, Law 5. Create value. How do you create value for yourself and for others? See, value. Profit to the giver is the consequential effect of value. When we understand the principle of value in the business world, we really start to understand why people act. Okay? Value is the intersection of three things. I'd invite you to write these three things down. Value is the intersection of these three things. What does it mean to provide value? Three things. Where these three circles intersect, here, value is created. Circle number 1 is this: demand. The demand for what you do is the first principle in creating value. Demand. Now, oftentimes I'll ask this question and people say, well, it's need, isn't it? There's a need in the marketplace, so that's what's going to create value. Well, no, it's not. It's demand. Because do we need an iPod to survive? Yes or no? Do we need it? We don't need it, right? But do we want it? We want it. So there's a demand, right? There's a demand for that. We know that we want that thing, okay? Do we need diamonds to survive? Do we need them? Guys, girls, do we need diamonds to survive? Yeah, we need diamonds to survive, man. And the bigger the better, right? In reality, we don't need diamonds to survive, but is there a demand for diamonds? Yes, there is demand. So stop thinking need and start thinking, what do people want? What do they want? What's a need that's not being fulfilled? If you said to me, you know, I'm going to go down on the corner of the street and open a hot dog stand, and I said to you, well, what are the things you need? And you say, well, I need sausages, and I need buns, and I need tomato ketchup, and I need a little kind of stand, and yeah, you need all those things, but what do you need most of, folks? Yeah, you need demand. You need people that are going to buy. So the first key to creating value is the demand. The demand for what you do. The second key is the ability to do that thing. See, because some of you might identify a demand in the marketplace, but you haven't got the skill set to execute. Are you with me? Does that make sense? So how do you create that ability? You might have the ability, and that ability needs to be significant. So the first stage is demand for what we do. Is there a demand? The second, do we have the ability to make that happen? Third, what's the third one? Pardon? Scarcity. Well, I wasn't going to say it like that, but you're absolutely right. I was going to say the demand, the ability, and the difficulty in replacing you or it, which is scarcity. Same thing, right? creating value in the marketplace is not always easy, but when you understand what is required, when you understand the principles that underlie that, then you can become more successful in the business world. Next one. Growth. How do you create growth? Seek growth is number 6. Seek growth. How do you really scale it? How do you make it big? Growth is a function of understanding why people do what they do, and also a function of understanding what specific elements in the business are those things that the masses are going to want. And generally speaking, you will find that there's a little curve that happens like this. And most businesses actually only get to about here. And what happens is they build their business to a point where there's enough money for them to live on, and then they kind of plateau out and they stop doing the things that made them successful in the first place. See, this could well be perhaps, let's say 1 year. 1 year of operating that business, and you go hell for leather on that first year, and the moment that you start making money and the money starts, you start taking a wage from the business, we kind of start to slow down a little bit, and we start to realize that this business is pretty successful, I can live off the business, and we stop doing the very things that made us successful in the first place. So how do you get across this chasm? And this is usually can be a tough place to get through. Well, this is scalability, and this is the next stage, and this is what I do for work. We help businesses scale. We help businesses become market leaders. We help businesses acquire other companies that are already doing the things that they want to do in the future. And that is the fastest way to build a business. You can try and learn everything yourself, but it might take you 1,000 lifetimes. The best thing to do is find a business that is already moving forward, and then look to grow that business internally, but mainly externally, through acquisition. And if you look, I challenge you, in fact, to look at everyone on any of the rich lists, okay? They've all made their money through acquiring businesses. Even Warren Buffett. You might say, well, Warren Buffett's a stock guy. Well, yeah, but the only real way that Warren Buffett is able to invest in all these companies is because he owns certain companies outright, right? Like Graco. Some of you might know that insurance firm. That's float. You've got an insurance company, it's a great business because you get all the money up front and you just hold it. So now you can invest in all these other companies. But if you really look at the most successful people, you will notice that what they do is buy complementary businesses and scale that way. And you can see, it's obvious, isn't it? It's the fastest way to grow a business. Who out there currently has customers that we want to acquire? And we go and get those customers. We go and identify those customers and we build the business. And then the last one, the last law, if you will, is give back. Give back. And I think everyone here knows that I don't really need to tell you why we need to give back. You know, I do believe what goes around comes around, and if we can make the world a better place by what we do and the impact that we leave on this planet, then that will be paid back to us. In 1982, moments after Air Florida's Flight 90 left the runway at Washington's National Airport, it was clear that the plane was not going to fly. As it shuddered and stalled, the pilot turned to his co-pilot and said, "We're going down." 3 seconds later, the plane slammed into the 14th Street Bridge and plunged into the icy waters of the Potomac River. Onlookers watched in horror as the fuselage, which had broken free from the tail section, sunk beneath the water with its rows of passengers still in their seats. Within 4 minutes, 4, 5, and 6 people were left bobbing and trying to hold on to the tail section. Only 6 people were left. The rest had died. Priscilla Toredo had a newborn baby with her on that flight. She was screaming hysterically, trying to find a baby. Her eyes were filled with jet fuel. Bert Hamilton had broken his hip and his arm, and he was holding on to another passenger, Kelly Duncan, who was a flight attendant who'd made it. But it was freezing cold in the water, and as onlookers watched on, they realized that they couldn't get across the icy water, so the only way that they could get these people out was by helicopter. 5 minutes later, that's a long time in a situation like that. 5 minutes later, the helicopter could be heard thwacking through the sky, dangling a lifeline. As it dangled over that carnage, Arlen D. Williams, a balding, middle-aged bank examiner from Florida, grabbed the first line, and he handed it to Bert Hamilton. Bert Hamilton grabbed it and was pulled to safety very quickly. On the second trip, the helicopter came back. Kelly Duncan grabbed it with another individual. As they went up, this second individual fell back in the water. An onlooker from the shore jumped in to help her and save her. She was the one with the jet fuel in her eyes. The third and fourth time, Arlen Williams caught the line and he handed it to the next person. On the final trip, when he came back, the helicopter came back, Williams was gone. He hadn't made it. Now, you and I will never have to be in a situation like that, I'm sure. But if someone like that could do something for strangers, how incumbent upon us is it just to do something with our business or our professional life that can impact others in a significant way? Most of the businesses that are successful today and have really made it didn't start out with the intention of making a lot of money. They started out in creating a need, understanding demand, and really trying to execute against that to help people create a better life. I just saw a gap. Usually they say, I just saw a need, I just saw a demand, and I wanted to create something. So if you go after the money first, you might be successful, but you won't be fulfilled. Does that make sense? Understand that it's important to recognize that why am I doing this in the first place, and let the money come after that. Self-worth is always more important than net worth. But if you get that right, you can look forward to the net worth. One last point and I'll be done. This is a poem that I learned a few weeks ago. I read it and I thought this really applies to what we're talking about here today in understanding what it takes to be successful in our lives as individuals, just trying to get ahead in the world. It goes like this. A lady was waiting at an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shop, bought a bag of cookies and found a place to drop. Engrossed in her book, she happened to see that the man who sat beside her, as bold as could be, took a cookie or two from the bag in between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. As he munched on cookies, she watched the clock. As this gutsy cookie thief diminished the stock, she got more and more agitated as the minutes ticked by and said, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each one he took, she took one too. And when there was only one left, she wondered what he would do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half while he took the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this man's so rude. Why, he didn't even show any gratitude. She'd never before felt so appalled and sighed with relief when her flight was called. As she gathered her belongings, she headed to the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. As she boarded the plane, she sank in her seat and opened a book which was almost complete. As she reached in her bag, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If these are mine, she thought with despair, then the others were his, and he tried to share. In a moment of clarity and a moment of disbelief, she realized that she was the ungrateful one, the ingrate, the thief. Why do I share that with you? For one reason. Sometimes we think we know what it takes to be successful in life. The only way you can truly be successful in life is by getting around people that have already done it. And I challenge you to do that. It's been a great group. Thank you very much for this. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Do you want? Have we got some time for questions, or? Yeah. Okay. Well, just so you know, we've got a few copies of the book. If you want to get a few copies, you can see James at the back. For those, if you're interested. If you guys have got any questions, by all means, shout them out. I'd love to answer them.
I'm currently reading Richard Branson's Screw Business as Usual, and I was just wondering if you could sort of give us your thoughts on the role of entrepreneurship in solving some of the issues that the global economy and the world's facing. Yeah, good question. I've read the book and I think it's great. I don't think I can top Branson, so I think you're on the right tracks. I certainly think doing what, if you look at what Branson's done, he's never made money his most important priority. He's got involved in a number of businesses that lost a lot of money to start off with, Virgin Atlantic being one of them. So I think really the best advice I could give on that is make sure whatever you're doing is something that you really are passionate about and you really believe, because that's what's going to give you longevity. The money's nice, but if before long, I know people that have created businesses, sold them, retired to Spain to play golf for the rest of their lives, and they do for about 6 months. Then they got to get back and do something. So make sure whatever it is you do, you're passionate about it, and there's an element of giving back. Is that all right? Is that accurate? Okay, thanks. Any others? One here.
You say the best strategy for growth is acquiring businesses. What's the best way to get a startup capital to acquire a business then?
300 financial presentations over the course of 10 years is the easy answer. In reality, though, the real answer to that question is this: most people try and raise cash. Number one, through presenting to the wrong people. These aren't qualified people that are actually decision makers. And secondly, they go cap in hand, as opposed to we're looking for financiers and we'd like to interview you as a possible candidate. So you kind of turn the table. What you do in a bank. Don't go to the bank and say, can you lend me £50,000? You go to the bank and say, what we're looking for are a number of investors, and are you the person that can qualify lending of up to 50,000 or up to 100,000? If not, you're wasting your time. You know that. You need to find that out early. And once you find that, then move forward on that strategy. The other thing is banks represent maybe 5% of the equity that's out there. There is so much money available for deals. There's more money chasing deals than ever currently. Now, you would think it would be the opposite because of the global economic downturn. But if you've got a deal, or if you've got something that has already got traction, then it shouldn't be too hard. The real issue for most people is they just don't get out and talk to people. Is that okay? All right, thanks. Any others? Yes?
You said there's a lot of money chasing deals at the moment. Is that just in the UK or all parts of the world at the moment?
I think there's pockets of it all over the world. Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the VC firms and private investors, they are flush with cash at the moment. And the thing is, though, again, you've got to get around the right people. Talking to your mate who you grew up with, as much as you love him, is not the guy that's going to be the one to take you to the next level. So it's about developing a level of seriousness about what you're doing and really saying, this is my business and I need to see it go to here. I need to get around some people that are going to be able to make that happen. One of the things I did when I went back into business and started buying property, we spent some time acquiring 270 private homes a few years back. And one of the ways we did that was we had 10 billionaires on our list. And by the time we met the third one, we had the money for the deal. Question over here?
Do you think having an MBA helps you as far as getting credibility for raising money?
Yes, it does. I don't have an MBA, but what I do have are people on my board that are significantly more successful than me. And I think if you can do that, then there's nothing that can stop you from never feel like I haven't got the qualifications to make it happen, because you can always go out and find someone that you borrow other people's credibility to make a deal work. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, if you haven't got the MBA, don't worry about it. Just find someone who has already been successful in business or someone who does have the MBA. But track record is more important than qualifications every time. Every time. Good question. Thank you. Any others? Yeah, sorry. Okay, well, James, if you see James at the back, he'll sort that out for you. We're happy to sign it and what have you. There's a little bit of a discount off it, but then all the money goes back to Sable and Stone, anyway, the publishers. So, if you're interested, have a look. The other thing is, write this down in your notes. Number 7, lawsofwealth.com. If you sign up at that site, that's one of my websites. If you sign up on that, straight away you'll start to get some really great articles on clear business thinking. Not the kind of stuff that the academics will write. This is stuff that works in the real world, about how to create value, how to identify a value proposition, how to raise cash, all that kind of stuff that really, really, really takes, that will really take you to the next level. It's great reading all the self-help stuff, right? That's good. But there comes a point where you're like, I need tangible answers. I need to get to this step, and then from that step to this step, this is what we'll do. That's what we've got in our book, specific stuff. One more.
All right, so you've got your business idea and you don't have the personal money, so you're looking for investors. My fear has always been, who am I to approach some business people with my idea? Why would they need me? Wouldn't they just go, oh, great idea, Seth. I'll take that idea and we'll invest in that, and thanks very much. Where do I add value to that relationship, and how can I protect that?
There are different ways of protecting. Obviously, we can talk about that probably after looking at some of the IP issues. But I think really the biggest problem that a lot of up-and-coming entrepreneurs think is that they think their deal is so unique. And usually it's not, if I'm honest. Usually it's been thought of before. But the real issue is that getting the money from those people is going to be, every single time is going to come as a result of the passion and the tenacity you've got. Let me give you one quick example, and then we'll be done. Khan Academy. How many of you have heard of Khan Academy? Khan Academy online. Write it down. Have a look at it. Khan Academy is a company. It's a non-profit that was set up by a guy who was a hedge fund manager, and it's a learning website. It's had millions and millions of hits, and it's relatively new. And he decided, after he depleted 40 grand of savings, he decided what he was going to do was get out and try and meet one person every day that would qualify, that would be a qualified prospect to get the money from. And he did it for, I think, about 2 months. And then the person that he thought would least get the money from was a lady named Ann Dorr. Anyone know who Ann Dorr is? Ann Dorr is the wife of John Doerr, funnily enough. And John Doerr is the owner of the venture capital firm in Silicon Valley that took companies like, I'm trying to remember, I think it was some of the big, maybe Dropbox, they're about to go public now, a few other large companies. I was going to say YouTube, but that's not right. That's Sequoia. But there is John Doerr and Andor. If you Google them, you'll see who he is. Big VC company, massive companies that most of the names you know the names of. These are the people that, and he thought, well, I probably won't get the money off the wife. After the meeting, she said, how are you financing this? And he said, well, actually, here's the situation. It's pretty bleak. And she said, okay, well, good luck. And kind of he went off on his bike, and she went off on his bike from a coffee shop. And just before he got home, he got a text. She said, I've just wired you $100,000. Right? So never underestimate what can happen, but it's only going to happen if you execute, okay? Just get out there and do it. So I really, really, really want you guys to be successful and self-actualize, and I hope that you do that. Okay, are we done? Yeah. Great, thanks.